The word Israel essentially serves as a functional label assigned to the group that the covenant applies to. In the Old Testament, that label applied to the ethnic Jews, but when Jesus Christ came as the Messiah, fulfilling all the prophecies and established the new covenant, Israel became the church, or the believers in Christ, no longer the ethnic Jews. Because the promise of Christ is not exclusive to an ethnicity, rather it is composed of all types of people, including both ethnic Jews and Gentiles, as long as they are Christians. This disproves the dispensationalist idea that there are two separate people groups of God, but rather all that believe in Christ are included under the label of Israel and Jew, which explains why the word everlasting was used so much when describing Israel in the Old Covenant in the Old Testament. The seed of Abraham that applied to the Old Testament Jews now apply to the Christians under the New Covenant, because the Bible clarifies that the true Jews are inwardly defined by heart and spirit, with baptism being the indicator, not circumcision or your ethnic composition. We know this to be true that the church is the true Israel, because the Bible makes a distinction regarding the fake Jews or the Christ rejectors, as described in Revelation 2 and 3 as the synagogue of Satan. The reason there is massive confusion in the Christian world today regarding this particular subject is because they fail to understand that Judaism is not the same as what the Hebrew religion was before Christ. The helpful way to understand this from a Christian lens is by labeling the pre-Christian religion, for the sake of grasping this concept, as proto-Christianity, because they were the subject of the covenant. When Christ came to fulfill the old and establish the new covenant, an important distinction was made. The Jews that rejected him, many of whom were the Pharisees, were no longer a part of the covenant, being cast out as it is stipulated in Psalm 37 as well as Matthew 21. That is why in John 8, Jesus says that they don't worship God because Jesus is God, but rather they belong to the devil. In 70 AD, after the failed insurrection shut down by Titus and the Roman forces, known as the Great Jewish Revolt, the Second Temple was sacked, which Jesus predicted as well in Mark 13:1-2, leading to the Jewish diaspora in the end for Second Temple Judaism. During this time period, the descendants of the Pharisees evolved Judaism into an entirely new religion known as Rabbinic Judaism, characterized by the rejection of Christ. During this time, new sacred Jewish texts were developed, most notably the Talmud, with very controversial verses such as describing Jesus as burning in hell with human excrement, which fueled the animosity between Christians and Jews throughout history. With that being said, it would be sensical for Rabbinic Jews to be Zionists. They believe the covenant of Abraham still applies to them because they don't view Christ as the Messiah. Therefore, whenever they claim that 4,000 years ago, God promised that the land that is in Palestine, they view it as an eternal divine promise said to be true by the old covenant to their descendants. However, for a Christian to be Zionist would be nonsensical because they are implicitly rejecting Jesus' covenantal terms and New Testament teaching that the only way to the Father is through Christ. How can the Christ-rejecting Jews, who are also guilty of deicide, remain under this covenant just because of their ethnicity? Jesus also makes it clear that under the new covenant, his promise to Israel isn't a physical piece of land, rather that his kingdom is not of this world, that it was physically unobservable, and that you had to be born again, aka Christian, to see the kingdom and be part of the covenant. We also see many parallels of this old covenant, new covenant / ethnic Jew-Christian dynamic within the Old Testament and the New Testament. In Exodus 19, Israel is referred to as God's treasured possession, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. In 1 Peter 2 and Revelation 1, these exact descriptions are applied to Christians. In Isaiah 60, the oppressors of Israel are set to bow before them. This is reversed in Revelation 3:9, where Jesus says the fake Jews, or the Jews of today, that are casted out of the new covenant due to the rejection of Christ, will bow before Christ and recognize the Christians as valid. Christians throughout history, including Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, and even historic Protestants, have come to a consensus on this view of the covenant. There have been some church fathers that have suggested aspects of dispensationalist views, such as premillennialist eschatology with Irenaeus, Justin Martyr, and Tertullian, but none have ever subscribed to the 7 rigid eras of history, the dual view of Israel and the church, the secret second coming, or the rapture, and a necessity for Zionism.